Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about Stargirl Season 2, the rundown review. So, this review is just going to be an overall synopsis of pretty much what the second season was about, and why I haven't been as happy with this season as I was the first season, and why this show just initially just broke my heart this season because like before I even go into detail, first let me just say I do love Stargirl, the television show. When it first was announced, I was like ecstatic because I became a fan of it because of Justice League Unlimited when they had those like 2 or 3 episodes with Courtney in it. And I just thought it was like a really fascinating character. Like, she had like the blonde hair and look of like Supergirl, but a completely different outfit. And that stuff was really interesting. And her personality just took me by surprise in the Justice League episode. So I was just like very fascinated. So then I started researching it and I'm like, oh wow, this is based off a real life person that actually died. Like how tragic. So when I heard the show got like announced, I was like, cool, man, I'm finally gonna get to know some stuff about like Stargirl. But then as I started researching more, they started bringing in other characters. I'm like, oh, this is like a Teen Titans version of like the JSA. And I wasn't happy about that when I heard about it. Until like I saw the costumes, I'm like, wow, those are actually some impressive costumes. And I saw the costumes from that I think what was it? That Arrowverse Crisis episode when they did like the cameo and stuff. I'm like, wow, those are some like impressive costumes. Like maybe this would be like cool after all. And then I watched the first season. I fell in love with everything in like the first season. The cast, the characters, the costumes. I love myself some Burke. Now, like I said before, she is just one cutie patootie of like an actress, and she does an extremely good job as Courtney. Because I've seen other two different versions of Courtney in live action, and with those two, which I will be getting into just a slightly little bit, I never understood who Courtney was when I saw those characters on those other shows. And like I said before, you have to watch the video of Courtney, not Courtney, but Burke, pretending to sell candy as though it's illegal drugs. This video is hilarious. I have no idea when it was made, but it was made sometime way before Stargirl. And you have to watch that video. It is hilarious. She's literally in the street, like in like an alley, selling candy to a man. Like it's drugs. Like it's funny. Like this girl is funny, and this is something she came up with herself. So I do love the Stargirl show, and I love the first season. It surprised me in way too many ways. It's in fact has become my all-time favorite superhero show. That I think it's the best one currently out right now, and I say that as controversial as that is because there are a lot of comic book shows out right now, but they don't always cut the mustard. See, the Arrowverse is not as good as it used to be when it first came out. I used to love the Arrowverse. I loved Arrow the first couple of seasons. I loved Flash the first couple of seasons. I loved Supergirl in the first season. I really liked Legends in like the first season or the last couple of episodes of the first season because I didn't watch the entire first season. But then after a while, when they started getting their sequel series or seasons, I should say, things started like going downhill a little bit, like slowly. Oh, I also liked what's his name, Black Lightning in the first season. So normally in like the first seasons, I liked all these shows, but then with the more seasons that came, things started like changing, and then they became what I like to call CW-fied. And I like to think of now the CW as like an STD that has infected many shows because of the formula in which like they have their shows. Oh, also, I also kind of like Batwoman a little bit. Like I like what's going on in the third season, except for her taking over like Wayne Industries and stuff. I like a lot of some of that happened in the second season. In the first, I can't get over Ruby Rose's bad acting. Like I just can't. And I feel bad because Ruby Rose is going through like a lot of stuff right now with the WB, but I can't get past her bad acting in the first season. That made it a little dreadful and stuff. But I stuck with the show until like the last couple of like episodes. I just had to give up of the first season. And so like anyway, but the Arrowverse used to be like really good. Even their crossovers used to be like really good. And then everything just started like dwindling and stuff. Once they created their formula what the CW wants, things just kind of took like a hit for like the worst. They started adding in way new characters. A lot of characters weren't getting enough screen time. There were way too many filler episodes. I've gone all into this. I'm not even going to that anymore. Watch another video that I put out of like why I'm no longer a fan of like the CW Arrowverse. But when I started watching season 2, of course I compared it to season 1 because it piggybacking off of season 1. Now the thing about Stargirl, the television series, is that it really didn't start as a CW show. It started off as what used to be called the DC Universe shows. DC Universe was a Dismo app or network, whatever you want to call it. And then they shifted to HBO Max. And sadly, Stargirl didn't transition that well on DC Universe, so it went over to the CW. Now, I don't know how much of the production started in season 1 with DC Universe, but DC Universe shows are more darker. I don't get my words messed up. More dark and more grittier. There we go. I'm combining gritty and dark together. But they're darker, they're grittier, they cuss a lot more. They're not afraid to show blood. They're not afraid to like kill in a very gruesome type of way. And so with Stargirl, like I said before, it started off as DC Universe, but I don't know how much of it was part of DC Universe. But then it showed its first episode on DC Universe, and then the rest just followed on the CW. And it was the thing about the Stargirl show, it's a light-hearted show that has darkness and has edginess to it. Not grittiness, but edginess to it. And so, and it has a very good blend of those two. It's a nice blend of light-hearted humors and also darkness. And that's something a lot of shows right now are starting to struggle with. Titans is a prime example of that. It's struggling big time. It doesn't know what it wants to be. As for Doom Patrol is just it's hard to explain Doom Patrol. It's just a lighthearted, wacky show, similar to that of Legends, but better. Cause like, it's hard to explain. Like, it's just hard to explain. Cause like, with Doom Patrol, they know they're silly, they know they're wacky, but they have these deep, kind of darkish, emotional characters and episodes. Whereas Legends, it started off as something serious. Then once people started disliking it, they just like, oh, we don't care no more, let's just be wacky and everything. And they can have like a giant doll come to life in Legends, and it could be a completely stupid episode. But they can have a character turn into a puppet on Doom Patrol, and it makes total sense. Like, it literally did. Like, at first I was like, oh Lord, they're doing the puppet thing. But actually, they did puppets on Legends too. But then when they did the puppet on Doom Patrol, it made perfect sense and stuff. But yeah, so Stargirl, I think it's the best superhero like show out right now. Like, and that's hard to say because I used to be a huge fan of The Flash. The Flash used to be the best of all the Arrowverse shows, but then from what people have, I stopped watching The Flash a couple of seasons ago, and from what other people have been saying, the show sucks now. Period. And so like, Stargirl came in, and I was very worried for Stargirl when the show first started because I was afraid that the Phantom Menace was going to tear that show apart because it has a female lead, just like they did Batwoman. They tore Batwoman apart before the show even came out. They tore the second season apart before the second season and the new actress even took in the role. So, and they did the same thing with Captain Marvel. And they did the same thing with Ghostbusters. I'm like, and they did the same thing with Lara Croft, the new Tomb Raider thing. And I'm just like, Lord, like they're gonna do the same thing to Stargirl. They're just gonna rip this show apart before it even comes out. But I didn't really hear much coming from them. Plus, I don't watch their channels no more, except for one. He's really funny, but when he gets too toxic, I have to like turn it off. But but then when the show came out, I see the writers and the creators and stuff. Like Jeff Jones is the creator. I don't like. If the stuff that Ray Fisher said is true about him, then Warner Bros. And DC, they kept him despite that. They fired Josh and his toxicness. But I've heard some things about Jeff Jones, and to the point where people who work with him don't like him. But Jeff knows all the right people in both WB and in DC. He's not going nowhere no time soon. Plus, he's bringing in tons of money with his comic books and his creations. He could be as toxic as he wants to be. They're not going to do nothing. They're not even going to touch this dude unless they can really pin something hard and concrete that he can't smooth his way out of. But and Greg Bertinelli, a person who I do not respect because he screwed up the Arrowverse, and other shows too, like I had like no faith and stuff. But then they listened to all the backlash that's been going on with the fandom menace and what's considered wokeness in Hollywood and SJWs and Mary Sue's, and so they made Courtney not to be what's considered a Mary Sue, somebody who's perfect. In the first season, like, you know, she struggled and everything as she was trying to learn how to like use her staff and everything. Things just didn't come easily to her, but she did have a gymnastic background. She is a very stubborn little girl. She's a very sweet, kind-hearted girl. And so I think that was great that they showed her struggling at first because it kept the fandom menace at bay. They never attacked this show, and thank God for it, because it's a great show. And also, like, she doesn't like put down every male that like she sees, so you know that kept those people at bay and stuff. The only person she has any real conflict with is her stepfather Pat, and that's only because of the comic books. That's just how it is. And for the most part, they kept, for the most part, very true to her origins. Like, it's a little tweaked here and there and everything, but her personality does remain the same as it does kind of in the comic books, not as extreme. She, like I said, she is a nice person. She is very heroic. Being a hero is just something she just wants to be. And she's very stubborn when she doesn't always get her way, especially when her stepfather is always telling her, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. And she goes and do the complete opposite. That's like such a Courtney thing to do. But I was watching, God, I forgot the name of this channel. It might be called Origin Comic Books or something like that. I'll link it in like the picture. And they decided to do like the origins of Courtney. I'm like, oh wow, this is a lot of stuff that I didn't even see. And like the show, like Courtney was like a very crappy, bratty person in the beginning of the comic books and stuff. So they kept that out. They want you to like this character, not hate it. So I understand that. And so, but for the most part, like I said before, I'm starting to like learn more about Courtney that I never did before, because in her first 2 live action appearances, I didn't know anything about this girl. Like, they didn't explain nothing into her like background for the most part. Like, the first time I saw her was from Brett Ivins, and she played her in Smallville. I forgot the name of that episode. It might be called Absolute Justice. It was a pretty good episode. It dealt with the JSA, and it had like, it was like a really, really, really good episode. It was where Starsicle. I'm getting names confused, man. Icicle Jr. He wanted revenge because the JSA put his dad in a coma, mainly Hawkman, because in this version, because you know Hawkman's a very brutal person, and with especially with that mace, and so he put what's his name in a coma and stuff. So he wanted revenge, and so with that Courtney, the only thing I knew about her was that she's bad in school because she doesn't really always go to school because she misses out because she's been training to be a hero. She just now became Stargirl because Sylvester had died. Um, she took possession of his staff, and she teaches Clark, who's becoming Superman, the fundamentals of, just because you're a part of a superhero group, it's more than just that. It's a family. Like when she goes to his headquarters and the watchtower, she asks him straight up, where's like the giant round table? Where are all the chairs? Like, where's the kitchen so y'all can like cook dinner and all eat as like a team and everything? And he's just kind of like, huh? And she teaches him that this hero group that he's forming, because it was basically like the Justice League, but they don't ever call it that. She tells him that they're more than just your teammates. They are your family. Like, they look out for one another. They help each other out, no matter if it's personal or like superhero type stuff. And like, it's just, you might not have the same parents, but you are a family nevertheless. Y'all are like bonded like as one. And because that's what kind of like the whole JSA kind of thing is kind of about. They're more than just a superhero group. They're family and stuff. So that's really the only thing I knew about her in those 4 episodes she appeared in. Then there was a new version for the Arrowverse and Legends of Tomorrow. They had their own version of the JSA, and they had their own Stargirl. And there, I didn't know nothing about her. Basically with them, I guess, I didn't really watch those episodes. I watched the premiere, because that's when I started getting into Legends. But then I quickly got out of Legends because it just became dismal at some point. And then a lot of people kept leaving. But I love that fight between the Legends and like the JSA. That was such a cool fight. Even though some people on YouTube didn't like that fight, I thought it was awesome. But so with that, like I said, I didn't know nothing about that Courtney at all. So it's like that JSA pretty much is scattered throughout time and trying to protect like other stuff. And then of course we had the Earth 90 version of Stargirl, which was the same one from the Arrowverse that died during the Anti-Monitor stuff in that Crisis episode. So when this show Stargirl got announced, I was really happy to find out some things about her. And then, like I said before, I was worried because, they had a younger version of the JSA. But then I quickly learned to, like, really love those characters, especially Yolanda. Like, I love Wildcat 2.0. And the reason why I grew to love these characters is because one smart thing the first season did, it got us introduced to each and every character in their own specific episode. And we got to see what makes them tick and everything. Why are they the way they are? And they had great character development from the beginning of season 1 to the end of season 1. Like, they not only evolved physically, power-wise and stuff. Well, Beth kind of did. Beth didn't really evolve until the second season when it comes to like powers and abilities, but they grew as characters. This is the problem I'm having with Titans, because with Titans, their powers are evolving, but they're not growing as a team and they're not growing as characters. And when some characters do grow, they tend to regress and everything and go back to what they first started off as, not learning from the mistakes that they made. Raven is probably the most evolved and growth of them all, but it was very, very rushed. And so I was very impressed with how these characters were written in season 1. And it caused me to just like take a whole new perspective on like all these shows. I'm like, well, if Stargirl can do it, my God, then all these other shows should be able to do it as well and stuff. And so with that, the first season also had really great action. My God, I hadn't seen action that great since like Arrow season 1 or anything involving Robin / Nightwing on Titans. And the thing is, they did it in such a great way. Like they have these huge group fights where you see what everybody's doing at the same time, and the camera moves around from character to character, and it's very Like the directors film it in such a movie-like way, you know. Also, it had great villains. The first season did. The first season villains, they was just like when you first see them, they blended in as normal, regular people, and nobody really knew that they used to be supervillains because their whole personalities have changed. Once the JSA got disbanded, they won, and they're like, okay, time to go to our normal day lives, and that's what they did until the JSA started to come back, and then they started wanting to do more bad stuff, and then so like they went back villainous, and when they did, it was cool. Nothing felt crammed, nothing felt forced. They all felt natural. Everything always had a natural flow of progression in season one of Stargirl. Whether it was storytelling, it was character development, you know, whatever. And also with the action, some action stuff took me by surprise. Like not every episode was heavy hitting action. Is your typical superhero stuff. You have a lot of dialogue, and in the last couple of minutes or so, you have like an action fight. Some of the action stuff took me by surprise, especially with Cindy and Courtney. Their rivalry is just as good as, say, like the Joker and Batman, or Lex Luthor and Superman. And, you know, Cindy is a much more skilled fighter than Courtney. Courtney is still learning how to fight. Something Pat doesn't want her to do, but she's doing it anyway. And so, like, you know, Cindy will always like beat up on Courtney and stuff to the point where she would be so bashed and bruised, you think that she might like lose her life in the fight. And I remember one time, I forgot what happened, but something happened. Cindy did something, and it pissed Courtney off so badly that there's a scene, and I'll never forget this scene. I forgot how it started off and what happened to cause her to be so pissed, but there was a scene where Cindy's just at her room. She's like getting ready for night. She's doing her makeup, and you don't expect nothing to happen. Then all of a sudden, you hear a large crash. It's Courtney busting through the window on her staff, and she's just whooping on Cindy. She's whooping on her so badly that the fight gets taken out into the street. And Cindy is literally about to lose this fight until the dragon dude, her father's minions, like take her underground and stuff. I was just like, holy crap, that fight took me by surprise. I was not expecting that. That's like Arrow first season level like aggression right there, you know? And I was just like, whoa. Like I was just shocked. And then that season finale of the first season was so great. There was enough story, there was enough action. They even had some nice humorous part. Like Mike, I don't like, but I was okay with him doing what he did. And then a lot of stuff happened in the first season. So I'm like, okay, so where the second season gonna go from this? How are they gonna progress on this? Because what I was expecting and why I was so disappointed is that I was expecting that not to have those same exact storylines from the first season, but to evolve from the point of where they took or where they ended and stuff. And in some ways they kind of did in the second season, and in some ways they did not. And a lot of stuff, like the second season just confuses me so much. And after all this rambling, now I'm going to say why all this stuff disappointed me. So let's go into the aspects. It will be broken down into the title now of the show, the characters individually, the lack of action, and so forth. Now, just like with every like Arrowverse type shows, with now you kind of have to consider Stargirl being part of the Arrowverse because she's about to appear in Armageddon, and since she's about to appear in, and they also had that cameo in the Crisis, which now people are linking every cameo as like part of the Arrowverse. They're even trying to link Titans to the Arrowverse, but the Titan is not part of the Arrowverse. Also, just because Doom Patrol danced at the end of Crisis don't mean they're part of the Arrowverse. Anyway, so just like with all shows, it's named after a hero, but you have other heroes in there. And this could be tricky because like once you start introducing characters that are very well known, you want them to have just as much screen time as the main character, and you want them to have just as much screen development. A lot of people don't always get that. And some people argue that, oh, well, this show's not called like JSA or like Wildcat or like Dr. Mid-Nite. It's called Stargirl. Well, if that's so, then they should have just kept it with her and her alone, you know? But that's the problem with the CW. They want to show as much superheroes as possible. One, to make fans happy. And two, because they know they're never going to be shown in the live action movies. Because people seem to start thinking that Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are like the only members of DC. Especially Batman, Superman, and especially Batman. So like, so with all these characters and everything, they renamed now the second season into Stargirl Summer School. And I remember thinking about it, and then they started calling each episode chapter. So if the, say, the 5th episode would be called chapter 5. And so this kind of confused a lot of fans. They're like, why is this called Summer School for? And so here's my thing about this. If you're gonna rename a show or rename the season or whatever you rename it, it has to focus on that theme. You cannot shift and start doing something completely different. If it's called Summer School, every episode better retain to that of Summer School. Only the first, maybe two, maybe 3 episodes retained around actual Summer School. After that, disappeared. They went in a completely different direction. Now, the first episode primarily took place in school. We see that Courtney is still obsessed with like being a hero. She wants to patrol the streets at night, thinking the ISA might return. They have not. They're done for. Many of them have been arrested. Some have died. And so, you know, our man, Rick, he's just all like, look, they're done. We won. There's no point for us going out every night. We can have a break. We can be normal and everything. She does not want that. So that causes tension with the group. That was great. I love that tension. They kept Rick into kind of like his moody little grumpy self. And then so we see that Courtney has been doing bad in school lately. And it's all because she's been a superhero. She hasn't been attending to like her priorities and stuff. So she now has to go to summer school. Also, we see conflict between her and Artemis. Like, Cindy is on extreme edge at the beginning of the first season, all because of what all happened last season. She knows that they're supervillains. She knows they have offspring. She knows that those offspring might know who they are and stuff. And so, like, she attacks Artemis. She gets in trouble. The principal dude tells the parents, like, hey, you know, she's been doing bad in school. She now has to go to summer school. I'm like, oh, okay. So then now this is playing into the theme of, like, the show. And so, you know, we see her actually at summer school for, like, maybe 3 episodes at the most. And we see some things actually do happen at, the school. When Eclipso's, like, doing his thing, he affects the art teacher. We see Yolanda's freaking out when she has like visions and stuff like that. So some things are actually happening like at school. And what's even more great about that is that Cindy started forming her own ISA 2.0. And she started forming it with the children of like, you know, the original members. This was great. I thought to myself, you know, we got to see the teenagers whoop on the adults. Now let's see them do it on their offspring and everything. And then once they do that, I was hoping that that would be the end of the ISA and they can start moving on more to the whole Eclipso thing. I think bringing Eclipso in so soon was just a risky mistake. Because when you think of Eclipso, he's not like the ISA. He's not human. He's like this like other entity, like magical entity, a very powerful one. He's like alien, like godlike in some ways. And so like to have them face off against something that big is kind of like, well, they could take on anything after that, you know. And they didn't do something which I hope they did. I was hoping that they were gonna have Yolanda's little brother be the other incarnation of like Eclipso, like he is in the comics. That would have been great. That would have been great character development, but they don't. They don't even show her little brother anymore since the first season. But anyways, so with the whole summer school thing. So they started having some things revolve around summer school. I'm like, okay, ooh, this is awesome. After that, they stopped. We don't really see the school no more except for that one huge fight, and nothing is pertaining to that of summer school. After the ISA 2.0 gets like destroyed, that's it. And I'm just like, well, why call this summer school? Turns out this season only takes place within the span of like maybe 2.5 weeks. And because this show's always been shorter than most Arrowverse shows. They're like 22. This has like always been 13, even in season 1. And that's why I kind of liked a little bit about season 1. I would have preferred a longer season, but they was able to get what they had to do done in the first season without no fillers. That's what's so great about Stargirl. Unlike the other Arrowverse shows, there are no filler episodes really. Everything has specific reason. Even if it's like they kind of are a little fillers, like in season 1 with Courtney's dad, but that pertains to her character development and what she was going through, thinking that Sylvester was her dad, which he is not. She assumed he was, and he wasn't, and then she found out her real dad, and he's like, ooh, he sucks. But back to the whole summer school thing. So I was really irked that this whole season went to a completely different focus and didn't pertain to that of summer school. It makes no sense to why they called it summer school. They could have called it summer break and then had the whole season revolve around the summer break, but still they need to show why things are happening during the summer break. They could have called it Stargirl Eclipso or Stargirl something like something that pertains to all this like guilt and like other stuff. They could have called it guilty pleasure. That would have been like really neat. Cause Eclipse is all about like making people feel guilty, and it pleasures him, and stuff like that. But they called it summer school, and that made no sense. They were trying to be like different, and they were trying to do something like most other comic book shows don't do. Now, I just got through talking about Spider-Man, the animated series, in that John Schemper episode that I just recently released. Go watch that. That's really interesting. Y'all should really know how much he contributed to Spider-Man. And so, like, what was so great about Spider-Man, the animated series? In the first season, it started off, it was just a regular old show. But by the second season, he changed all that. He decided to call each season its own chapter. And so, and every episode literally pertained to whatever that thing was. The second season was the neogenic nightmare. Neogenics is the neogenic recombinator was the device that mutated people's DNA. It gave Spider-Man his powers, and it gave other people his powers too. Every episode revolved around that device. And like another season, it was called like Partners in Danger, where Spider-Man partnered with a different person, and they was always in some kind of danger. What I'm getting at, every episode pertained to that theme. And that's how you're supposed to do something. I remember the MCU did that with their Avengers Assemble cartoon. They started calling things different seasons, different titles and stuff, and it pertained to that. Another great example is Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. Each season was titled a book, just so they could be clever. Similar to how like John did the whole chapter thing in Spider-Man the animated series. And each book pertained to a different element. Fire, water, air, earth. And so the hero's journey always pertained to whatever that element was. Except for the first season of Avatar, it was water. And they don't spend much time in the water tribes. They mainly roam around the Earth Kingdom. But even though they weren't in the water tribe that much in the first season, a lot of episodes still pertain to that of water elements, teaching Aang how to master water and teaching Katara as well because she never had a master. And the whole water bending scrolls were very essential to that season. And then, of course, in the finale, they did go to like the water tribes, and it had these huge water battles and everything. But then when they got into like the second and third seasons, second one was Earth, and then it pertained mainly all in the Earth Kingdom, and we learned a lot about the Earth Kingdom and Earthbending. And then in Fire, we learned a lot about the Fire Nation. They're basically like the Nazis of Germany. And just like back in World War II, just because you was a German didn't mean you were a bad person. It's just your country was just messed up in the head. Because of one man, one evil man. And that's how it was in the Fire Nation. Everybody was, or not everybody, but a lot of the people in the Fire Nation were brainwashed because of the Fire Lord. But not every person who lived there was necessarily evil. And they were just taught to, like, that they was better than everybody and stuff. And so, and then of course with Legend of Korra, like I said, the same thing too. They had their seasons based on different elements and stuff, or the spirit world. And every episode will pertain to that. And there will be little filler and stuff. And so it irritated me that Stargirl season 2 was called Summer School because not everything pertained to the element of summer school. Like we saw Courtney was doing bad in school, so she had to go to summer school. We saw Rick, he was just doing bad in general. And so he had to go. He had to go, but he didn't go, I don't think. And for some reason, Yolanda went. But there was no real reason to call this season Summer School. Now, season 3 is called Frenemies. That makes perfect sense. A lot of the enemies are now joining the JSA and gonna start trying to be friends with them. And it's gonna be causing some conflict. But that would kind of really confuse me and bother me about season 2, because it just never made no sense for it to be called Summer School. If it was to show that it takes place during the course of the summer, then call it something like Summer Break. But, you know, seriously. Now, let's talk the budget and CGI for this season. So, many people have pointed out, and it's pretty obvious, that the budget looks like it appears to be roughly the same as season 1, but it seems to be slightly less. And you can tell by not necessarily the CGI, because, you know, the thing about the CGI is like, take Stripe, the suit. There's two different versions. There's a CGI version, and it looks amazing, and there's a practical one that's actually that tall that looks even more amazing. And so like they have to use it sparingly. They can't use it in every episode. That's how it was in season 1. So I get that, you know what I'm saying? Like something I was wondering, like, how in the world they're gonna keep doing this mech suit in season 1, because that thing is gonna cost a lot of money. And so they was wise about how they did it. The certain practical shots they did up close that had to do certain things, and then the rest was CGI, and then the mech suit would like show up here and there. Now, in terms of the mech suit, the reason why I say the budget might have been cut a little bit, slightly, just slightly, is because when it comes to the striped mech suit, it doesn't appear that much in season 2, CGI wise, that is. It appears in like the first episode, and then it takes like a hiatus, and then I think like then that I forget the mechanic dude Zeke's name. He's talking about adding this to it and adding that, because I think it got damaged in like the first or maybe the second episode. It got slightly damaged, not majorly damaged. So then it doesn't appear no more. It only appears in like the actual practical form, just standing up. Then, of course, when the ISA 2.0 shows up, they dismantle the crap out of it. And it doesn't show up anymore after that until the finale, when it's back in its CGI form. And so they had to use what money they had mainly for like that and some other stuff. And so when they did show the mech suit again in CGI, it looked amazing in the finale. and stuff. The only part that looked kind of fake was when the chainsaw came out and it started hitting the Calypso. That kind of just looked a little weird and stuff. But you know, the mech suit did look great when it was like shaking his butt when the saw whipped out and then when the flames came out. But the fact that they didn't use it that much shows that they had like a budget problem. Because when you look at season 1, that suit shows up a whole lot more. And the fact that they had to story-wise is saying, oh, it got dismantled, that's how, like, you know, they had to get away with not using it because their money had to go other places. And it's kind of weird that a little teenage girl with a baseball bat and a dude with a sonic violin was able to destroy that thing. Like, I mean, come on now. Come on now. They're not even that strong. That sonic violin, okay, yeah, I can see it doing damage, not that much damage. And Artemis with the baseball bat, come on now. Now, Grundy, Solomon Grundy, he was barely shown in season 1, and like just this time, he was barely shown too. But when he was, the thing about he was shown a lot less mid in season 1. And then when they did show him, it was mainly just like the fight like Rick or to show what happened in the flashback. And the thing about Solomon Grundy never looks great on screen. Like they used it like no matter season 1 or season 2, they used their budget for other stuff, but they use it whatever they have left on him. It's never impressive. But then he does show up. This is a strange thing. The reason why I say it got cut again. He shows up more in season 2 than he does in season 1, but in season 2, he mainly just shows up to sit next to Rick and eat food. And not only does, and when I say he shows up, sometimes you don't even see him, you hear him. And to tell you the truth, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, he still shows up. Well, he shows up around the equal time, but then he shows up. But the reason why he shows up more because you hear him than you see him. But then when you see him, he's literally just sitting down and he's eating food. And he's sitting down twice. And then another time is that episode where Rick thinks he like killed that little girl, and then he has to fight Grundy, and so it's a little wonky with the CGI then. But then we get to the finale, and at first the CGI looked kind of cool when he was fighting them, and then he died. So they had to put a little bit more budget into that, and they had to have a fight scene with him. But of course they killed him off, so they can't use him again in the 3rd season and waste the budget on that. And then so like for the most part, the budget had to also go to the shadow world, which looked really cool. So that's what most of the budget probably went to, that and of course the CGI for the monsters and the mech suit. But however, this tells you right here and now that the budget got cut because the action scenes, lack thereof, and like, you know, Courtney and her staff. See, I'm gonna get to the action a whole lot more later on in this video, but the action in this season was never really there. And whenever they do have action, you notice that it's always choreographed a certain way in season 1. They like to do the wide shots where they're showing everybody fighting and the camera work goes to like person to person in a continuous line. That costs a lot of money to do, especially if you have to do reshoots because people mess up. Also, there's a lot of wire work with Yolanda's character, Wildcat. Because they barely fought this season, there was little wire work for her. And then there's Rick and his strength, because he barely suited up. He didn't have to like use his strength or anything like that. Now, of course, when it comes to Jenny, they had to be impressive with her Green Lantern powers, so that was very impressive. But then she disappears halfway into like the season. Like she shows up, disappears, shows back up towards the end. And mainly she's just blasting stuff, not doing anything like really cool with it. Now we get to Courtney's staff. Courtney's staff is present throughout the entire season 2 because she's holding it in her hand. But have you noticed something different? All it really does is like she'll have it and it will sometimes light up when it's in her hand whenever she needs to use it. When she fought Jenny that time, they had to use the CGI for that, but it was a very short battle. When she had to blast Rick because he was hallucinating, like I said before, again, like very short. She had to use it a couple of times to heal people, but all it did is glow. Now, you think glowing would be cheap, but it's actually not. It takes a good while to make all that stuff look good, but it's still doesn't cost as much as saying like the mech suit. And so of course she had to fight the teacher dude who turned into all that goop. Some nice CGI was used there. But the only time she ever really uses her staff, like in full mode, is during the high school fight and during the finale. Those are the only time we ever see her truly using her staff. In season one, that staff was used a lot, and in ways you don't always think. It was you. They had way more fight scenes in the first season, so the staff had to be used a lot. And with all that spinning and twirling around, that CGI is hard to do. Trust me, because it has to look realistic. Not only that, but in season one, the staff had more of a mind of its own. It kept moving around. It kept flying. It kept doing what it wants to do. It kept tugging on Courtney. It flew around like a lot. Like the staff didn't do none of this stuff in this season, to tell you the truth. How often did you see the staff just fly around by itself looking for Courtney or something like that? That tells you they had a budget problem. Another reason why they had a budget problem, how often this season did you see Stargirl actually fly on her staff? I only recall one time in season 2, and that's when the huge battle at the high screen. I'm thinking of ice cream. High school happened when she rode the staff, but she didn't even ride it for that long. In season 1, she was constantly riding the staff. She was learning how to use it. She was surfing on it. The end credits the end scenes to season 1, she's just flying around on it, just having a good time of flying around the city, and then they go stripe in the air. Season 1 had a much bigger budget than season 2. It is in the actual footage. You can see it for yourself, because you have to think about what all the CGI has to go to. The fact you didn't see her staff do all this amazing stuff this season is letting you know they did not have the budget that they had last season. Now, like I said before, when that show first got started, it was a DC Universe show. They have a bit more money than the CW and stuff. I don't know how much of the CW took effect once the show went over there in the first season, but you can clearly tell they went the cheap route of just walking around a lot, like the CW normally does and stuff. Also, the budget had to go into like the cast. You just can't like work for free and stuff. And so, like, speaking of the cast, when it comes to actual budget, not the actual individual ones, I'll get into that a little bit later. Season 1, even season 2 is huge. Like, it has a huge cast. But when you stop and you look at season 1, budget wise, like with the cast, it seems like season 1 had more characters and had more recurring characters actually doing insane stuff. Like, I just don't know. Like, it's weird because, like, you know, you had the ISA that was still alive. You had the JSA 2.0. You had like the scenes with the a bunch of recurring characters like Jakeem's sister. I forgot that she was friends with Courtney and stuff, and I completely forgot about that the second season. And so, you know, you had a bunch of like recurring characters like Shiny Knight and everything. And so, like in this season, and then like you also you had like the first season you had like the flashback stuff with like the parents and the old JSA, and then now with this one, I don't know, maybe they had the same amount of cast members, but I noticed that the recurring cast didn't show up that much as they did in the first season. Like, you always have your main cast, and the main cast in the first season showed up in nearly every episode, and they always had something to say or do. In the second season, the main cast, the only person that really focuses on is like Courtney, like full send, which of course is her show, but you know how it is with these ensemble casts. They always focus on other people. And so because of that, the main cast only showed up for their weak storylines. And then the recurring cast, mainly like villains and allies, they sporadically showed up. And not only did they show up, they will pop in and then they pop completely out, and it's kind of like, hey, what happened to this person, you know? So now in terms of cast and recurring, it was just kind of weird. Like, take Shiny Knight from season 1. We thought he was just a janitor, but he kept appearing like in small doses here and there. And then there was just something odd about that dude. And then when Courtney and Cindy was fighting and Cindy was about to kill Courtney, he shows up with the sword, and it's revealed who exactly this dude is. He is the like Shiny Knight, a member of the JSA, a member from DC Comics. And it's like, whoa, that was a huge plot twist. Like, I didn't see that coming. I had no idea. That was like a huge mystery, and they set up so well. And so like, he would show up when he was truly needed, but he showed up a whole lot more than like you would think he would. And then of course, towards the end, after the huge battle was ended, he's now looking for his Pegasus horse. And so after that, they just completely wrote him off the show, and he's not mentioned again. He got the same treatment as the Hawk people from Legends of Tomorrow. See, they can't bring in a winged horse. That would cost way too much money to have that thing fly around, and you don't want to see it just like running on the ground because it's supposed to fly. Now, they could have did the whole Hawkman type thing where they just make the wings go inside his body, but who wants to see that? And so just like with the Hawk people, he just got completely written out the show. I bet you he would never get mentioned or show up again. And so then they had a new character this season, the mechanic, Zeke, the weird dude for comedic relief. He had that mysterious vibe to him, like Shiny Knight. So I was thinking, okay, he's gonna be somebody important. He's gonna be like a former hero or something like that, and we just don't know about it because he was a strange character that I did not like. I saw no purpose in him because Pat could have did everything that he did. Basically, he just shows up one day, sees this giant mech suit, is all like, oh, he must be working on something cool, like a car or something like that. And then he's like, I'm going to add this to it, I'm going to add that, I'm going to have a chainsaw, and that. And so the whole season, he just goes through not wondering who these people are. And even though they had to see like news of the JSA and stuff and the giant mech suit, he should have known they was heroes and how they're always hanging in a group with each other, and why Pat is always hanging out with teenage kids of all things. And then he disappears completely after that. And then he shows back up in the finale, and now he's all like, okay, now I know everybody's secret identity, and I'm going to help y'all out. He was just an oddball character that really served no purpose whatsoever. They could have shown Pat working on the suit and working off screen, you know, because he just could have pulled an all-nighter. There was literally no point in bringing this character in the show. And he's not from the comic books. He's not a hero. He's not a villain. He's just this wackadoo character. And to me, it just made the tone of the show more wacky. And I will get into the tone a little bit later, because there were times this season it felt like watching a Disney Channel show, but more kiddish and everything. Now, 2 recurring characters from the first season keep showing up in the second season because their storylines now over. I was happy to see them. It's the Crooks. It's Sportsmaster and Tigress. And so, like, because their storyline isn't over, it's shown that they've been arrested off screen. And so that's where they've been in the entire second season. Then they break out of jail just for them to wreak a little bit more havoc, and then for like, you know, their daughter kind of like to find out, and then they're all like, oh, woe is me. And so like, let's go back to jail. So then they stay there for the rest of the season. It's like, what was the point in bringing them back just to make them go away again? Their storylines, you could easily just say it like y'all did. They got arrested. You could have shown a scene where Artemis visited them in jail. That's it. They didn't need to break out just for them to have a moral lesson taught to them and go back to jail voluntarily. Because it don't matter, because Artemis broke them out in the finale off screen, and they showed up at the last battle. Don't know how they knew where everybody was at, but they knew where everybody was at, and then they helped out. Then the last scene, they bought a house next to Courtney and them, and saying they're the new neighbors. Now, they have been upgraded for season 3 as main characters. Here's the thing. Artemis broke them out. They're fugitives. Why aren't the cops looking for them? And how are they able to buy a house when they're wanted fugitives. Like that's bad writing right there. And so what was the point in bringing them back? They could have easily just like, they could, there was no point. They could have easily, like I said before, just had them be in jail, have Artemis talk to them, have Artemis be like bad or whatever, and then towards the end, don't have them show up for the final battle because that was stupid of them. Just be all like, hey, neighbor, we're your new neighbors now, something like that. But there's really no point in bringing them back. Speaking of Artemis, she is like one of the least developed recurring characters ever, which is quite a shame because people love this character from the Young Justice cartoon series. So how did they drop the ball majorly in 2 seasons with this character? In the first season, she's just an aggressive teenager who plays sports. She shows up maybe in 2 episodes, that's it. Then she shows up here again and she's trying to get like recruited for something, and then like football wise, and then like so she's upset about her parents, and she gets recruited into the ISA 2.0 where Cindy lies and like, oh, our parents were the good people and the JSA are the bad people. Well, if an Artemis believed that, she really believed her parents were good, like superheroes fighting like the villain. But if so, why when she turned into Huntress or whatever? No, wait, not Huntress. Whoever she turns into. I don't think she had a code name. Why did she try to kill the JSA members and all this other stuff? And like, she saw how evil Courtney was acting and everything. And so then she scares Beth, and then they have that weird, interesting, cool fight where, in the high school, only for Eclipso to show up and scare the piss out of her, where she runs off and she disappears for the rest of the season. It's like, why keep bringing this character in the show just to do nothing with her? And then she breaks her parents off screen, and then it's like they buy a house and now they're all smiles and giggles and everything. Like, it's kind of like, no, your parents are villains. Your parents have killed people in the past. You became a villain. You tried to kill a bunch of teenage kids, and now you're all like, oh, we're all friends and everything. Now we live next door to each other. That is some bad writing, and this is why season 2 pissed me off so much, because that just makes absolutely no sense. Like, that whole storyline and family made no sense. If they really wasn't going to do anything with them, they should have saved them for season 3, because season 3 is now called Frenemies. It would have made more sense for them to show up in season 3. There was no point for them to show up in season 2 whatsoever. It's just bad writing. And then there's Music Master's son, whose name I still do not know. Like, I don't. He showed up as kind of like a guest appearance a couple of episodes in the first season. We saw in the first season finale he has a dark side to him. His mom, I think, died or something. I forgot what happened to his dad. And then he shows up in this season, and he just kind of like, you could tell he's just pissed. Like, he's been corrupted by Cindy. He's staring down Yolanda. I thought they were going to do some really interesting stuff with him. They should have. He has not been given his dues as a character. They could have found somebody off the street, a random person, hired them for this role, and it wouldn't make a bit of a difference, because that's how like lackluster this character is and how much this character barely shows up. He shows up for the huge fight scene at the school, and what happened? Eclipso just straight up kills him. That's it. This dude has probably had at the most, like, if you count how much screen time he's had, it's probably amounted to anywhere between 5 to 8 minutes in 2 seasons. No point in bringing that character in if they wasn't going to do anything with them. The whole ISA 2.0 thing, I said it before, that should have been the main focus of season 2. And then after that, they could have did the whole Eclipso thing in season 3. If they were going to not do nothing with those 2 characters, then what they should have done is they should have had the Eclipso stuff happen in season 2. The frenemy things could have happened in season 3, where Music Master's son and Artemis and all of them show up. That would have been perfect. That's better writing. But this season, this is just a mess and stuff. Like it really truly is. When you truly look at the blueprint of this season, it is truly a mess. They tried to cram so much into 13 episodes, and the tone was just completely different all around the place. I will get into the tone much later. Now let's get into Cindy. I love Cindy. Everybody loves Cindy. That's why we want her on the show. They completely just reset the button on this character. First, she shows up evil as ever with the whole Eclipso thing, thinking she is the boss of Eclipso, this godlike being. What? Like, even Cindy's not that stupid in the head, but they made her stupid in the head to think that. In the first season, she was way more smarter. So much more smarter that she realized she couldn't keep her dad around because, because she wanted to be bad all about herself and can do a whole lot more worse things to him because he keeps holding her back and stuff. And so, like, then they tried to redeem her character with her stepmom. We know she hates her stepmom. We know that her stepmom is terrified of her and will do anything she says when her dad was still alive. And now we see, oh, she likes her stepmom all of a sudden. And then we Eclipso made her murder her stepmom. And then she's all upset and crying, all like, don't you ever do that again. I'm the boss of you. They wrote this character so differently. I don't even recognize this character most of the times in this season. But then the other times she still acts like herself. She still wants to kill Courtney and everything because of all the stuff that happened last season. She forms her ISA 2.0 just for it to be dismantled in the same episode she basically formed it in. And that's why there was no point of ISA 2.0 if they were going to do the whole Eclipso thing. So then she gets banished to the Shadow Realm and people assume she died, but I knew she didn't. And then when we see her, she's still as grumpy as ever. But before even then, in that art teacher episode, we see Icicle Jr., he's all like, I'll never be friends with you, especially how you gloated when your mom died and everything, her biological one. And we see her again pissy and wanting to like hurt him and stuff. But then we also see she actually loved her biological mom, even though she killed her and everything. And so it's kind of like, why? Why are they shifting this character's personality? And then it's like, oh, that's why. Because they want to redeem her so she can join the JSA. So towards the end, when she got freed from the Shadow Realm, her personality was a little like season 2, but completely different. She was saying please. She was calling people Mr. and Mrs. She was acting polite. Let's not forget, this is the same girl who got jealous of Henry hanging out with Yolanda, took his cell phone, transferred the pictures of the naked pictures of Yolanda to her phone, and then spread it like the entire school, which caused Yolanda to have so much grief in season 1 and have no friends and have her family hate her behind. This is the same girl who murdered her dad, murdered her mom, murdered her stepmom, tries to kill Courtney on a regular basis, tried to destroy the world with Eclipso. This is that same character. They have now flipped the script and redeemed. And she's acting nice. And she wants to join the JSA. Villains do turn good in comic books, but it takes years and decades for that to happen. You can't just do it between a season and expect people to believe it, I love Xena. I always go back to Xena whenever I'm talking about modern day stuff. But when Xena turned good in that second episode of Hercules, I was like, no, this is too fast. This is too soon. And then she was still good in the third episode. Then she had her new TV series and she was a good person. But then when they delved deeper into her background, we saw just how evil Xena was when she was younger and kept trying to destroy the world. So now that second episode of Hercules makes sense. For 2 decades, she's been trying to destroy the world. And so it's kind of like when she feel like she can't succeed in that, she just gives up and turns good. That made more sense. With Cindy, I'm not buying that because she's just a teenage girl. And we know how evil she is. As for Shade, I'm okay with Shade. He seems like a really cool character this season. I love the way how he posed when he showed up at the school. He stood exactly the way Shade does in like comics and cartoon series. That was great. I wish he could have been like a villain, because that's who he is. I have a feeling he's gonna turn into a villain in the third season. There's just something strange going on between him and how he always looks at Courtney's mom. You know, it's something strange. Now, this is one part that did confuse me about Shade. Is when Jenny reformed the crystal with her ring, and kind of like, you know, I don't understand what happened after that. Like, he appeared and he seemed to be villainous, and he talking about how this is supposed to control Eclipso, like the crystal, and then Eclipso shows up. I was so confused by that whole scene, because then right back in the next episode he's being good again. So, and then it turns out he even helped out members of the JSA, like help deal with some personal grief. So I guess he's just not going to be a villain, but he's supposed to show up in the third season. And I'm just like, why? His storyline is now over. Do not overcrowd this show. It is such a CW thing to do, and they're gonna do it. This is why CW ruins their own shows. The Arrowverse is too crowded. There are characters that always like appear in Arrow and the Flash that had no business staying. They overstay their welcome, and he's overstaying his welcome. Why? He's a fan favorite, and he's a really good actor. And it's just like, no, his story is done. If he ain't gonna be a villain in the third season, get rid of him. The mom was okay in this. She was a bit more better last season. And last season, when she didn't know everybody's secret identity and found out when she did find out everybody's secret identity and got pissed at Pat, that was cool. She basically served no real purpose in this season. I don't want to see her hanging out with the JSA. I don't want to see her helping them out. She has no business doing that. Don't turn this into like a Flash situation where Joe's wife is like helping out with the team, and Iris is always helping out the team. They got no business helping out with the team because they're not superheroes and stuff. So I don't want to see that. But it was kind of cool. You know, she has that thing with Shade, and he gave her the card, and she called him to help. So that was fine. I liked it better, and she didn't even really help out in a mom kind of way. Like, Pat was doing like all the like parenting counseling type stuff where she really didn't. She's like, yeah, I knew they killed somebody back in the blah blah blah, which he must have just recently told her, because in the first season she had no idea like he was even like a sidekick. You know, so that was kind of like a weird continuity thing. He must have did sometime off screen. And so that would have been more interesting to see. But in the first season, she was more motherly. That's who she is supposed to be. This season, she was just there for some bizarre reason. Like, they could have wrote her off and said she took a vacation, and I would have been fine with that. Mike. Ugh, Lord have mercy. If you ever watch any of my Stargirl videos, you know in every episode I say constantly, I don't like Mike. I'm okay with the actor. I just do not like the character. In first season, he was more okay, kind of, because he's the annoying brother to Courtney. That's who he is in the comic books. That's it. And he was very annoying in the first season. That's fine. That's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to get on our nerves that way. But he got on my nerves in the second season a whole lot differently. Now, because he smelt himself in the first season and getting killing that one dude, now he wants to be a hero full time. He wants to make it, like when he got kidnapped by Courtney, he's all like, man, I need to step up my training. What training? You stay home, you play Pictionary. That is what you do. And then he's all like, nah, Dad. Like after his the mech suit got stressed, he's all like, no, I want my own striped suit. I'm gonna build my own suit. No, you stay home, you play Pictionary. You do not get to be a superhero. And then with the whole pen situation in the Genie of Thunderbolt, it was kind of like, okay, have your 15 seconds of fun, but you go home and you play Pictionary. And so like, then he gets rid of the pen, which I'm so glad he got rid of the pen, because I do not want this dude to be part of a team. But if he were to kept the pen and hang out with Thunderbolt, I would have been kind of like okay with that. I wouldn't have been like thrilled or happy, but I've been like, okay, whatever, have some fun. You know what I'm saying? And so, and then occasionally help out, but just have fun off screen with Thunderbolt. And so then, like, all because like he killed somebody in the first season, like he killed what's his face, and nothing. He doesn't feel nothing about that in the second season. He just goes about his everyday until Courtney is upset about the whole Yolanda. Yolanda's like, I'm a murderer and all this other stuff. And so he's all like, I know what she's going through. I killed what's his face. And it's like, dude, you have not grieved at all or got upset about that the entire season until somebody else got upset about that. That's bad writing. And then he went back to being his normal self. So it's just like that one couple of seconds he felt bad. And it's like, what kind of writing? This is CW writing. But then again, it could also be like HBO Max ain't that good at writing either, because look at Titans. But yeah, it's just like, I wanted this dude to stay home, but they kept cramming him into every episode, trying to help out with the team. And then I did not appreciate how he talked to Jakeem and everything, talking about, I sent Thunderbolt off to find like a responsible like owner, and then he must have made a mistake and found you. I'm like, boy, I will jump through that TV screen and smack you if you talk to him like that again. And but then I did, however, like the cute little scene when Jakeem's sister came in. And she's like, you need to do the dishes. And he's all like, you want to help me do dishes? And then they help do dishes. And that was fine. Like when he hangs out with Jakeem, I'm totally okay with that. Because they have great chemistry together. They're just two brothers that don't get to do much. And their sisters don't want to look at them the way they want them to look at them and stuff. But what pissed me off even more is that after the whole huge battle, he's all like, me and you, man, we're gonna form our own superhero team and then with Thunderbolt. I'm like, no, you stay home and you play Pictionary. This is a CW problem. They want to cram as many characters into the show as they can and have everybody be a stinking superhero. And I hate that to death. That is what has ruined so many of their shows that used to be great back in the day. Arrow. They should have learned their lesson from Arrow. People didn't want to see Felicity constantly being part of the team trying to be like a hero. She could have been like the girlfriend, she could have been the inventor, she could have been like the computer person, but they put way too much storyline into her. They did the same thing with Iris. They did the same thing with Joe's wife. Supergirl, like I stopped watching that, so I don't know who they kept cramming into that show. Maybe it was Alex. Alex kept doing way too much superhero stuff, and she was like, when I was watching the show, she was more of a sister, but now she just seems more like everything, like has a lot of storylines and stuff like that, from what I hear. And it's just like, no, learn from your lesson. You are not making good choices. And it's like, the dude does not need to be a superhero. Now let's talk about the two people who actually do need to be a superhero, who disappeared throughout this entire season after they first appeared. First, let's talk about Jenny. Jenny, I was so happy that they finally brought in a Green Lantern. I have no idea who Jenny is in the comics. I think she's relative new and has been there for like a couple of years or so. Maybe she's been there for a decade or so, I don't know. But I don't know who she is. Now we have to remember, her Green Lantern ring should be completely different from that of like mainstream comics, because she's the Alan Scott Green Lantern, the one where wood affects that ring. But they seem like they're going the modern day Green Lantern route. So okay, whatever, I'm okay with that change. So I guess maybe there might be some, maybe we'll get to see another Green Lantern, who knows? Maybe we can see some people from Oa, who knows? The Guardians, who knows, you know? But when they introduced that character, I liked that episode. It was like a cute, quirky episode with some edginess to it and some mystery to it. That's one thing this show always did, or used to do very well, was blend in like the humor with the darkness and stuff like that. And so she comes in, she wants the lantern because she feels it is hers. Courtney don't want her to have it, and Courtney fights her. It's a very brief fight, but it's a nice fight. And so then we see Courtney does not trust her. She doesn't know who this girl is. She does not trust newcomers no more. This personality shift of Courtney is interesting, and they should have focused more on that. But it ends in the same episode, so no development there. And so with Jenny, Courtney was getting like upset because Pat was being more of a mentor, father figure to her than he was to Courtney, and we all now know Courtney now loves herself some Pat. Um, and so like we see that the whole green energy keeps reacting to her emotions and she doesn't know why. And then suddenly she gets kind of like angry and stuff because she and then so the lantern is literally about to explode. Now if you don't know the power of the green lantern battery little thing that recharges their ring, think of it like this. It's like a nuke times a million. If it explodes on a planet, half that planet will have like a huge hole in it. That's how powerful that thing is. So yeah, they was in dire strength. And it was a cute little moment of all them like running past like the diner, and Pat's just kind of like, oh, what now? And so like they're like running, and then they just trying to decide what should they do with the lantern thing. Rick wants to smash it, but they're like, no, you'll blow everything up. And then so she takes it, and I'm assuming she's gonna fly up in the air. I forget what happens, but something explodes, and then we think she's dead, but no, the green lantern energy just absorbed into her body, and Pat's all like, oh, you are now the lantern battery, and the power is in you, and it's tied to your emotions, so stay with us, and we can help you learn how to use it. What does she do? She leaves in that same episode in the middle of the night, and she disappears for the rest of the season and don't show back up towards the end of the season. And then we find out she's in some kind of like Helix Institute thing looking for her brother, and they have to like bust her out. Then what happens after that? She reforms the jewel crystal thing of Eclipso, and then she's so drained after that. So basically she's just laying in bed for the rest of like the series. And so like, and she just don't do much. And then they cram her in with Beth. And then at the very end, like she just uses the ring's power to help blast the Eclipso, and that's it. And then she goes off again looking for her brother. And I'm just like, that's it? Like you bring in this interesting character just to get rid of her? Why? Because her power costs too much money to use on the show? And I think that's one of the main reasons why. It's not like the whole Shining Knight thing. See, with him, it was like a huge mystery. And so when he kept appearing, he appeared when he truly needed to. She just appeared whenever the plot needed her to appear. And it's basically just a whole setup for season 3. That's all she was brought in for, a setup for season 3. This feels like Pirates of the Caribbean, the second movie, with a whole movie, which is basically a trailer setting up the events of the third stinking movie. And that's all Jenny was. Jenny was just there to set up season 3. She had no real purpose in this season whatsoever. If they would have brought her in the third season, then that would have been fine because they want to do the whole Helix thing. But they could have done the whole Helix thing without her. This is why this show needs more episodes. Like 13 is no longer good enough because the CW is trying to turn Stargirl into their typical CW show. We're cramming a bunch of stuff in and having a bunch of stuff supposedly happen, but nothing's really happening. But they can't do that in 13 episodes. They need the full 22 episodes because this is no longer like a HBO Max type of show where they get straight to the point and then they go from point A to point B to point C. The problem with the CW, they want to go to point A, skip the point like J, and then try to go back to point B, but then skip the point T, and then go to point like Z, but then go back to point C and everything. And then there's Jakeem and everything. Why was he introduced? Why? I don't get it. Like, I know they wanted to do the whole Thunderbolt thing. Okay, fine. And Thunderbolt did serve a good purpose in the finale. I'll get to that a little bit later. But they showed Jakeem in just like near the end credits saying he's, oh, woe is me. I have no friends and nobody likes me. All I do is play video games. And my sister, who appeared in the first season, who just kept disappearing, doesn't like me and stuff. And I'm such a nerd and everything. Which I've said before. Why did the two black people on the show gotta be the nerdy ones for? Why? Beth was all the nerd they need. They didn't need to show another nerdy person. And he's always getting talked down to. And it's like, His sister don't like him. Mike at first didn't like him, but now he does. Um, he's just a dopey character who feels like he's messing up a lot. And then when he has somebody like Mike, little punk behind, like downing him, like what? I'm sorry, but like if I was a little black kid seeing that, I'll be like, oh, well, that's depressing and stuff. Like, why have another black character act this way? I don't get that. And because they changed Beth this season, they basically gave him the personality of Beth from the first season with no friends and oh, woe is me type crap. And it's like, oh, so you replace one black character with another black character. Gee, Greg Bertinelli, what does that sound like to you? Oh, I forgot. He doesn't do people of color that well on his shows, where they complain and call him out and call the other showrunner out. I forgot about that. And so, like, I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, fine, you brought in now this character. Okay, let's see what he can do. What is he about? I don't know anything about this character whatsoever. I never even heard of Thunderbolt. And when I looked him up online and saw the picture, it's this cool picture of them two standing back to back for each other. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. He disappears for the rest of the season. And then he shows back up in the last 2 episodes. I'm just like, now if he's filming Malibu Rescue Season 3, I will give that an excuse, but so far there's no word on the 3rd season of that show, which is a cool show by the way on Netflix. And so I'm just like, well, where is this dude at? Why introduce him and not do anything with him? And then as Mike is searching for the pen, we see like a giant cheeseburger, which is kind of funny, I have to admit. But that's what makes it look like a Disney Channel show. And which I will still get into a little bit later. And then so I'm just like, well, where is this dude at? What is he doing? He's having fun with the pen off screen. Okay, fine. But he's supposed to be a major player in this show. Why cram him into the show and do nothing with him? Then there's his like sister. I totally forgot she's friends with Cindy. That would have been some great character development, not only for her, but for Cindy as well. Because we could have shown that, you know, her and Cindy are just like, well, buddies, and they argue a lot. And then here's her dopey brother, and then Cindy finds out he has the pen. She wants it. And they could have built a whole storyline around that. But they didn't. For 2 main reasons. 1, the writers this season lost their minds. 2, he was not the main focus of this season. I said maybe 3 points. 3. There's 2. He's not the main focus of this season. Okay, fine. And then 3. It's typical CW mishandling people of color characters and only cramming them in to serve the purpose of hanging out with their white characters. The CW does that a lot. They have been called out on that for years, especially on Riverdale. One of the own stars of that show called them out majorly. 3 main black characters disappeared halfway into the 2nd season, and the show is like in its 7th or something like that. And those characters have never came back. And it's like they're doing this crap again. They did it with Jenny, an Asian girl. They did it again with Jakeem, a black person. And it's just like, why do they keep doing this crap? And if there was no real purpose in bringing them into the show, then they should not have been brought in this season. Bring them in another season. They got renewed early, so they could have brought them in then. And it would have served perfectly for Jakeem to do the whole frenemies storyline because of the whole Cindy and his sister thing and his clashes with Mike. But him and Mike are friends. So that could have been like a huge thing. Like, you know, give his sister a slightly bigger role to where she's siding with Cindy. And they want him to stop hanging out with Mike, and that causes confusion. That would have been a way better storyline. Oh, I swear. And then there's Starman. Look, I like Joel McHale as much as the next person. But I think when they killed him off supposedly in the 1st season, it was like, oh man, he's dead. But that's supposed to set up for character development of the other characters. He's basically got fridged for the other characters to have some type of motivation. And so, like, and it worked perfectly until they resurrected him at the end of the finale. He didn't die. They don't explain how he survived at the end of the credits. of the first season. But that's fine. We're gonna find out in the second season. We don't find out in the second season. He shows up towards the end of the first episode in the second season. He's talking to Pat's ex-wife and he wants to know where's Pat. He don't say why he's looking for Pat, and we don't find out why whatsoever he's looking for Pat. He only shows up in the first episode, and then he shows up in the 13th episode, the finale. Where was he between that? Oh, tracking down Pat. We have to assume. Why is he looking for Pat? We have to use our own brains and assume because they did not tell us. Obviously, he's looking for the staff. But is that even really him? Could it be an imposter? Could it be a shapeshifter? We don't know. The show does not tell us because the show is trying to cram so much in 13 episodes. And now he's a main character for the third season of season 3. And it's just like, why is he back? Yeah, he's back to show Courtney how to use the staff properly. Okay, fine. She has a mentor. She needs to learn how to use it. But she's been using it pretty good by herself, but there's still more things that she just don't know. And when he comes back, not one person questioned, hey, dude, are you even real? Like, are you like a shapeshifter? Are you an alien? Nobody questioned that. That is some bad writing. And so, like, he's gonna be staying with them, of course, because the CW likes to cram everything all together and have everybody live near to each other and stuff. And it's just like they could have put in a couple of it doesn't even take much, a few seconds each episode of him tracking down Pat. That's all they had to do. They did that with Morgan in The Walking Dead. I think, what was it, season 5? He was tracking down Rick, and every couple of episodes, we'll see Morgan getting closer and closer to tracking down Rick. They did not do that with Starman. Also, bringing him back from the dead, it defeats the purpose of his death in the first season. Same thing with Mr. Mid-Niter. It's kind of like that was supposed to have an emotional toll. So what, they're going to start bringing everybody back alive or something like that? It robs what's set up in season 1. So, in my opinion, that was some shoddy writing of him disappearing in the first episode and the last episode. That made no sense whatsoever. And to get on the characters of the third season, it's too big. There's too many of them. There are so many. First things first, we have the JSA 2.0. We have Stargirl. We have Wildcat. We have Dr. Mid-Nite. We have Our Man. We have Thunderbolt. We have Stripe. We have now Starman. We have Mike. We have Jakeem. We have let's see, Courtney's mom. We have Tigress. We have Sportsmaster. We have Artemis. We have Cindy. We have Shade. That is way too many characters. I know I'm probably gonna left somebody out, but I can't think of it right now. That's just too many characters. Those are just the main people. Then we're gonna have the recurring people and stuff, like the villains. And it's just too many people. And they're gonna try to make it again, probably in another 13 episode arc and everything. They need to increase the episodes. And we know the CW loves to do this. They love cramming as many characters in their show. They love making everybody a central part of the show. But we all know exactly what happens when they do that. Look at what happened to The Flash. They started focusing more on Iris. And The Flash got so little screen time because everything focused on Iris. And people hated that. Look what happened in Arrow. They focused so much on Felicity, so little on Green Arrow. And people hated that. I have not watched Supergirl in forever, but from what I've heard, the last season doesn't even focus on her because they're focusing on everybody else. And then, of course, when Black Lightning Kids suited up, it started focusing more on them. And Legends is just Legends. And it's like, that's what's going to happen because they keep introducing all these new characters. Somebody is going to end up taking the screen time away from that of Stargirl. And we know a lot about her, Stargirl, but there's still so much in the comic books they haven't even delved into yet, what they need to start doing more of. But let's talk about the JSA 2.0, our main characters. I will say this. Not everybody got enough screen time. The two members who didn't get that much screen time was Beth and Rick. Like, I was so shocked and surprised by what little screen time they did have and what little character development they had. Now, when it comes to the characters of the first season, there was way more character development. Now, I was not expecting those exact storylines to carry over to the second season. I was hoping they would build and progress and go and further show. At first, in the first episode, they did that in the second season. The characters are now living with the ramifications of what happened in the all last season in the last battle. And so Yolanda, she is still devastated. She murdered somebody. Courtney still wants to be that we gotta do what we gotta do and be superheroes and nothing else type thing. But then there's Rick and then there's Beth. Beth no longer has Chuck, the IA system, and she's devastated, she's sad, and she's depressed. Don't know why, and because she now has friends. I truly believe she was in love with the AI system, like romantically in love for some bizarre. It was kind of like the opposite. It was kind of like a weird online relationship she had, you know. Instead of a person talking on a computer, she had the actual computer. Then there's Rick. He's still grieving with the whole ramifications of the whole Solomon Grundy, his parents thing, but he went in a completely different direction that made absolutely no sense. The first season had way more character development because it was more character driven in the first season when it came to all their characters. We knew exactly who they were. We knew exactly who they wasn't. And now in this season, only one has really developed more than anybody else, which is Wildcat. And Courtney is still Courtney, she's just more gung-ho about it. So let's individually get into it. Our main girl, Courtney, she is the hero of the show. The show is named after her, Stargirl. We know that, like, you know, she thought that Starman was like her dad, and he turned out not to be. Her real dad turned out to be crap. When she found out about the staff and everything, she feels it's her duty to take up the legacy of her supposed father. She defies her stepdad, Pat, at every chance she gets, but then she learns to accept him and stuff. She doesn't like having people keep secrets from her. She does whatever it takes to like save like the city and the world because she just wants to be the best hero she can be. As a great example in season 2, she developed. We get to see how that progression goes. She is now doing terribly in school, has to go to summer school. She is always on edge when it comes to the siblings of the ISA. If one of them even like touches her or bumps into her, she freaks out and she attacks them. You know, she is progressing more from that person she was in first season. She will now risk and sacrifice herself just to save anybody's life, even if it's her enemy. When she sees somebody in danger, she no longer sees good and evil. She just wants to help that person. She would even doom other people's lives just to save that one person, even if that person is evil. She is the only person that it took forever for Eclipso to break. The reason why it was so hard to break Beth is because even though he started to break her, the goggles helped save her life, so she can be able to see through reality. She was able to use her smarts, not to be like deceived by that. However, Courtney was the only one that he had a hard time breaking. In the shadow world, he slowly, the effects of what happened to her slowly started to break down her psyche. Because the shadow world is all about gloom and dread and everything. So it started breaking her down that way. And then Eclipso finally got her to admit that, like, she hates him. He stands for everything she is against. He's about destroying lives. She's about saving lives. That was a beautiful moment. And then he possesses her body. That got completely rushed and she got saved within within a minute. I do not like how rushed this season was. They should have kept her evil until like the third season, and then they try to like save her. That would have been a great. That would have been great writing right there. Have her turn evil at the end of the season. Have her be evil the entire third season. Then that gave a real reason why the heroes had to team up with the villains to stop her. Now instead of her trying to save them, it's them trying to save her. Do I need to write this show? The second best character in the show, and in my opinion, is tied. Her and Courtney are tied as number one best characters of the show. Is Yolanda Wildcat. Yolanda started off with not wanting to talk to anybody, not having any friends. Why the whole school slut shamed her. Her parents disowned her because she decided to send nude pictures to Henry, which was like Brainwave's son. And so like she was reluctant at first, but she decided to do it. Cindy steals the phone and leaks them to everybody in the school. She is now slut shamed throughout the entire like community. In comes Courtney, wants to be her friend and everything. And so she's very hesitant because she just doesn't want to like deal with nobody. And when she sits down at the table with Rick and Beth, she doesn't say nothing to them. But then Courtney gives her the costume and gives her a purpose. When she puts on that costume and feels how great it is and doing all the stuff she does, it makes her forget about why everybody at school looks down on her. It gave her two new purposes in life: to start fresh, having this secret persona, and to get revenge on the person she assumes who was going to like leak her pictures. She has a dark side to her. It's more gray than it is black. She went to the hospital where Henry was at when he was comatose and everything, and she contemplated killing him. And it was kind of like, whoa, how dark is this character? But she doesn't. After that, she does what's needed to be doing. She takes down the ISA and everything. She helps out her friends. And like she now has like a new family that doesn't look down on her and stuff. And then she ends up murdering Brainwave, the father, with no hesitation. She knows he's evil. She knows she needs to take him down. And Courtney knows this, and Courtney's just kind of like, she just accepts it for whatever it is and just doesn't try to dwell on it, and they keep that a secret. Coming into season 2, she is at a crossroads with herself. She's this super religious person, but she committed the ultimate sin, and she doesn't know how she's going to deal with herself. And so she's trying to like live her life, but now with Eclipso being back, he's making her feel terrible about herself and terrible what she did. And she's constantly hearing Brainwave in her head. It drives her to the point where she is now broken. She blames Courtney for bringing this new lifestyle upon her. That is great character development right there. They have this beautiful argument of she is the murderer of the group. She's gonna have to be the one to do everything to take down the villains because the other ones don't want to go that route. And what do? Do you leave your villains alive to rot in jail to get out so they can kill more people, or do you put them down? They should have went more with that argument, I felt. But for the most part, it was nice just the way it was. Then she does something completely strange I thought was kind of a little slightly weird. After she is broken by Eclipso, she gives up being Wildcat. She will no longer be friends with Courtney. She doesn't even talk to the rest of the JSA members. She disappears off screen completely. And I'm just like, where did she go? Like, why did they write her off the show? Oh, because they had other characters to bring in. And so that was kind of weird. It made her look like a weak person. It made her look like a little bit of a selfish person just to completely disappear. We should have seen more of her not talking to like Courtney when Courtney tries to talk to her. They should have had more drama between those two characters in their regular civilian forms. They did not do that. It was mostly just a one-sided thing with Courtney feeling bad about herself. And so like then all of a sudden, Cindy's back, and Cindy knows they need Yolanda. So she tricks Yolanda into rejoining the team. She does it by egging her on, talking about how they don't need her because they got her. and Yolanda's all like, "You're evil. They don't need you," and she needs to keep an eye on Cindy because of what Cindy did and stuff to her personally, and trying to kill everybody else. And then, so now she rejoins the team and everything. But it's kind of like, okay, wait, you knew Eclipso was alive and well. He's going to destroy the world. He has the powers of just about like a god almost. He can have such destruction. She knew all that and stopped being a hero. But then when the psycho girl with the spikes and can regenerate joins their team, she's like, oh, well, I have to keep an eye on you. I have to be a hero again. No, that is some bad writing. It made Yolanda look stupid. And I don't like that at all. I get it, she's a teenager, but that what made her rejoin the team. The crazy psycho girl comes back, but the godlike demon thing didn't make her stay on the team. Like, that was just some terrible writing. Now we get into Beth. Beth and Rick really didn't have no compelling storylines this season. And in fact, in their solo episode, they was crammed together. That's how much the writers are letting you know that these are the two least favorite characters on the show. In the first season, Beth, she's just this dorky, nerdy girl who has absolutely no friends. Nobody wants to be her friend for some bizarre reason. So she has lunch every day via smart device with her parents while they be at work. This gets on the parents' nerves. They just kind of like, why is her daughter such a dork? Then she ends up becoming friends with the JSA people. And she does what any nerdy person with no friends does. She's obsessed with them. She's constantly talking. She's constantly smiling. She's happy finally in her life because she knows she has real friends. She ends up becoming a hero. The new Dr. Mid-Nite. She has the goggles who she can talk to constantly. I truly believe she fell in love with the AI system. It got smashed. She can no longer talk to him. She has her Braveheart moment where she tries to charge at the supervillain in the first season. He knocks her out. She's not a fighter, but she's very smart. She's proven in this season she can outsmart people by using the goggles when she is terrified with the whole Artemis thing. However, she still has not learned how to fight. If you take the goggles away from her, she is useless, and she will die within seconds. And her suit doesn't have no type of armor to it. She will die easily. But then they decided to give her a completely different storyline. They made it to where her parents are getting divorced. This really upsets her. Now, I get it. Her parents were her best friends in the first season. But she is a teenager. Get over that. Not only that, but I did not care for this storyline of them getting divorced. Why? The parents only show up briefly in the first season. They had the equivalent of like 5 minutes probably total in the first season. And they are never shown again. Why should I care that they're finna get divorced? And, so I get it to where that would upset Beth, but since she made friends in the first season, her two best friends, her parents, that shouldn't have affected her that much because she has friends to lean on. And so I did not care at all for this storyline. And then towards the end, when Mr. Mid-Niter shows back up, she doesn't care about her parents no more because she can't have the AI system shut. Then she gets to have him. And so then when she finds his wife and sends him on his merry way, she is saddened by that. And then her parents are now invested in her superhero life and want to be a part of it. But now she's kind of like annoyed. Why is she annoyed? She wanted them to be together. They're not getting divorced anymore. That was a completely stupid storyline. It's like, oh, we don't love each other. We're getting divorced. But hey, you're a superhero. Let's stay together. And it's just kind of like, that was the weakest storyline ever. It was like a Disney level channel written storyline. It served no purpose truly to her, to what happened last season. And it doesn't serve no purpose overall in the show. It was just like this weird little subplot that they shoved and crammed right in. And it's just kind of like, is the Beth character a weird character? She's a teenager who acts like a child mentally, but dresses like a middle-aged woman. And so she's just like all over the place. Now there is some slight showmancing shipping between her and Rick, but it hasn't went nowhere so far other than just them being together all the time and them giving each other like a look. And that is it. Now it's time to get into Rick. He is supposed to be the strongest member of the JSA because of his super strength, but he ends up being sometimes like the weakest, and his hour doesn't even run out. They completely shifted this person's character like profile and personality traits so heavily from the first season. He doesn't even seem like he's the same person. Like in the first season, he is a very angry, grumpy person. And he is that way because we find out his uncle is super abusive, both mentally and sometimes physically and stuff. So that is the reason why he is the way he is. He is a product of who he lives around and stuff. Then he ends up becoming a member of the JSA. He only does that when he finds out who his father was, the original Hour Man. He feels like no matter what, this is his. He's going to take it. Pat doesn't want him to, but he does it anyway. When he joins the team, he lightens up a little bit. He's less mean, but they still keep enough of his grumpiness to keep him who he is in the first season. His whole purpose is he's going to kill Grundy. He tells them that straight up. They keep telling him, you can't do that. You're a hero. We don't kill. He's like, oh yeah, watch me. So then he finally gets into that huge battle with Grundy. It's awesome in the first season. But then we realized Grundy was kind of being controlled by Brainwave. That's why he did what he did. So being Rick, he's pounding the crap out of him. He's getting ready to kill him. And he has like a breakdown and decides not to let Grundy go. We don't know why he has this breakdown. He literally was about to have what he wanted. And we don't understand why he did what he did. So we thought, okay, maybe we'll find out in the next season. Come the next season, all we see him do is distance himself from the group. At first, in the first episode, they kept some of his grumpiness because he's doing bad in school. His teacher is trying to help him. He doesn't want none of her help. We see him a little grumpy. So I'm like, okay, that's great. But then after that, complete personality shift. Like completely. We constantly, like I said, see him like break apart from the group and go his own way and constantly goes into the woods. We find out he's feeding Grundy. And he sits next to Grundy as he's feeding him and stuff. And it's like, well, why? Okay, obviously he feels bad for him for what he beat him up. We have to assume that. There's no hint towards that. And so, like, that's all he does in the entire stinking second season. He goes to the woods. He feeds Grundy. And then in his solo episode that got crammed in with Beth, but it was mostly mainly about him, we see that that teacher tried to help him out again with his schoolwork. She wants him to go to college. His uncle was just a jerk and everything. And we get to see more of that turmoil from the first season. That was great. They should have did more with that. We need this. I want to see more of what it's like for Rick just to be home every day with that man. You know what I'm saying? Then he gets broken by Eclipsa. And he has that hallucination and everything. And so he thinks Grundy killed that little girl, so he's constantly going after Grundy. He fights Grundy, but before then, he has a nervous breakdown in the woods where he screams into the air. I forget what he says, and I forget what he says because they don't dwell on it. But basically, it's like he's just basically tired of all the crap that's like going on with him. He just wants things to be like easier in life, or to be more clear or whatever. And it's just like he's just like a tired person because he's a teenager going through all this emotion. But we don't get to see him go through all this emotion as a teenager because the show people don't focus on him whatsoever. So we can't, that's not a good scene for him to have a nervous breakdown in the woods and scream and everything because we don't know exactly everything that goes on with him other than we know that he lives with a crappy uncle and stuff. And so like, and then when he is members with the JSA in the first season, you think things will be a little bit more better with him. But he still feels the way he does. He's a troubled teenager, but we don't get to see the trouble of him all that often. And then when he driving around, he's seeing Icicle Jr. painting around on the canvas mural on the wall. He just stares at him. Icicle Jr. stares back and has like a little grumpy moment with him. And he has another grumpy moment with him. And then he just drives off. And it's like, okay, what's the tension between those two? Is there history between those two? We don't know because, like, they don't focus that much on Icicle Jr. And then, so when he smashes his power device, what happens after that? He sends in Grundy. Grundy gets killed. He's upset. He has no powers no more. How is he going to get his powers back? He now serves absolutely no... Even Beth serves more of a purpose than him because she has the goggles, but he actually has no purpose now. And it's just because the writers don't care for him and stuff. They literally just don't care for him. Now, Pat has some cool moments in this season. He's less of a father figure so much to Courtney, but he upsets Courtney when he tells her what the JSA had to do to defeat Calypso in the beginning. And they had to murder the host. Courtney is upset about this. I don't understand why she's upset. Yolanda murdered somebody. She was okay with that. Her brother murdered somebody. She was okay with that. Why is she so upset about the whole Pat thing? She's been pissy with Pat in a different way than she was in the first season. In the first season, it was more like, you're my stepdad, not my real dad. You don't tell me what to do. Then she ends up loving him like a real dad. And she gets jealous when he shows more attention to other team members and when he lied to her. She doesn't want to be lied to. She doesn't want to keep secrets. You know, she keeps secrets from so many people. And so for the most part, we get to see some nice emotional stuff with him and the JSA members. Like, he really misses these people. He ain't seen them for 10 years. And he finds out one of them's alive. It's a happy moment, but they don't have much scenes together. And him and Dr. Mid-Nite should have more scenes together. Also, bringing the whole Dr. Mid-Nite back to life was just pointless. He doesn't even really help Beth out that much. He tells her, oh, you know, the goggles help you see through the illusion. But they could have easily had Chuck come back for like a couple of seconds and tell her that, you know? And then that's it. He goes away. And then so like, but then it was an interesting scene with Pat. Pat has always been a nice guy. He's not a violent person. He will fight somebody to protect his family. He's all about protecting his family. And he will literally go up against the most skilled fighter or somebody with powers just to like defend his family. But what made no sense was the hospital scene with Rick's uncle. Rick's in jail for beating up his uncle because the whole hallucination thing. And his uncle cannot move whatsoever. He's like in complete like body cast. He wants his uncle to drop the charge. The uncle won't do it. The uncle is a jerk. So Pat does some weird, creepy mess where he closes and locks the door, shuts off the blinds, and walks towards what's his name's uncle in a very pissy, mean kind of way, like I'm gonna hurt you kind of way. We have no idea what happened in the hospital room, but his uncle dropped the charges. That came out of nowhere. And there needs to be a follow-up on that, because if not, then that was a weird, out of place kind of scene. Almost it's kind of out of place with Beth and the whole her feeling different because she's black in town. Because when Eclipso started making fun of her and he started being racist towards her, it turns out Beth has insecurity problem about being like the black girl in town, but nobody ever picks on her for being black. And it's never brought up in any other episode. I don't get it. Like, I get what they're trying to do, cause like black awareness, but it felt so out of place, and it's never follow up on, and we never see no more of that. That makes no sense. So let's get into villains. The villains in the first season was so much better than the second season. The villains were constantly recurring. The villains, they looked like ordinary people because they went about their normal business days now that the JSA was dismantled. And so, but then when they start doing the evil stuff again, you're worried for the city. You're scared for the city. Every villain served a purpose that made them like terrifying. And that's what was so great about the first season villains. Um, they actually had, and you actually knew halfway into the season what it was they wanted to do and everything. You didn't have to wait to the very last episode. Brainwave was the scariest one of them all, seconded by the icicle dude. Because the icicle dude can just freeze you to death and everything. And so, and Brainwave can just mess with your mind. And Brainwave really wanted to kill Courtney. Like, my God, every time he was on screen, I was terrified for her. And so, with this new season, the villains, the ISA 2.0 is an afterthought. Cindy has been redeemed. Um, when it comes to Icicle Jr., I don't even know what they're setting up for him, because like Courtney and Yolanda's all like, look, you need to stop hanging out with him. If he finds out what happens to his dad, there's no telling what he would do. His ice powers are starting to form. And what's odd is like when Cindy started talking to him, the grandparents don't want her nowhere near him. So it's like, are the grandparents good? Are they bad? I don't get it, because they know their son was evil. And then, so after that, and then we see him and Courtney, and they start to have like a love connection that gets broken up very easily. And then it's never pursued after that. And then he shows up towards the end again, still painting. And the grandparents reveal who they are, and they got powers. But where is this gonna go? You know what I'm saying? I guess it was set up perfectly for the frenemies thing, but they should have did a whole lot more. So him just popping in and out, like I said, when it comes to the evil people's kids, they don't do much or nothing with them. And then we have Mr. Bones and the Hillis people, who basically got set up for the entire second season. So they're gonna do their thing the next season. But let's talk about the actual villain of this season, Eclipso. I had mixed feelings about Eclipso this season. At times he was cool, but then other times it's kind of like, that's it. Like, this is what the problem I have with Eclipso this season. I still think it was too early for the JSA 2.0 to be fighting a godlike entity. He was too powerful for them. Now, he reminds me a lot of Voldemort from the Harry Potter series. When he was still doing his spirit thing and still trying to come back alive in the first 4 or the first 3 books, he was more terrifying. Why? Because you hear people talk about how sinister he is, how evil he is, how he will stop at nothing to gain power. Then he shows up in the 4th movie book, and he's just about as human can be, with a fish face. He's evil, but people around him act more evil. And basically with the Voldemort thing, it's just like, oh, he's grumpy, he'll Avada you, and that's it. And that's it. And he forms all these evil people, and he had them do his bidding. But then he is a powerful force to reckon with, but we really don't get to see it because he doesn't really show up that much in like the movies I remember when I used to watch, because I never read the books. And then so it's kind of like, okay, then he disappears for the 5th movie and shows back up at the end, and he has that huge battle. But then when the people start showing up, he disappears like a coward. He's basically just a man who is just evil and wants power and kills a lot of people. The legend of Voldemort is more scarier than the actual person. Then in the final battle, every time he gets pissy, he just goes and kills people and stuff. And so it's like, I never found Voldemort to be a real threat, not a real villain. It's just, it was the idea of him and the whole, don't say his name. That's more scarier than the actual person itself. And I feel that same way with Eclipso. See, the thing with Eclipso is that when he was doing the whole crystal thing, we saw how powerful he was. So it's like, whoa, this dude is something. Then he actually shows up in the flesh. And when he showed up, he was scary, creepy. He killed Music Master's son within seconds and turned him into ash. And it's like, holy crap. There's no way the JSA is going to stop this dude. They showed his power set so strongly in those few seconds, you'd think he would do that constantly, but he doesn't. After that, he turns back into that creepy little kid, and the kid is creepy. I like that kid's acting. He brings on the creep factor. When you saw the little creepy kid show up, you're like, uh-oh, what's gonna happen? And what did happen exactly? Basically, Eclipso's whole thing was just to make people feel sad about themselves. He killed Music Master's son. He banished Cindy to the Shadow Realm. He's a powerful dude. But all he wanted to do was make people go, oh, woe is me. And that's all he did for the remainder of the season. He just made people feel sad. That's not scary. That's not powerful, in my opinion. I thought he was a weak villain. Brainwave scared me more than this dude. Just because this dude had a scary look don't mean nothing. And scary looking dude barely showed up because it was mostly the kids showing up. Now, he was effective in breaking 2 of their members and stuff. But when we get to like the finale, now all of a sudden we know his end game. We know his master plan. It took them 13 episodes to find out what this dude wanted. What did he want? He wanted to break Courtney, make her hate him so he could possess her body and take possession of the staff that wounds him, and so that he could have both control over darkness and light and be a god. A master plan. It just took too long to figure that out because they don't even let us know until that part. And when he does take over her body, what happens after that? Starman shows up out of nowhere. And he uses the power of having her remember like all the good times she had and what she fights for to suck the evil out of her. So he gets out of Courtney's body. The power of love has triumphed again. That is not good for me. You do not make your main star the villain for a minute and then have all the evil get sucked out of her from a character that showed up out of nowhere. And we don't even really know how he did what he did and why and all this other stuff, you know what I'm saying? And like, so then the big bad villain of the season gets defeated in the dumbest way ever. First, all the people with like energy blasting powers just whooped on him and blasted him. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, he's gonna blow up. All this light source is gonna kill him and everything. Nope. Nope. You know what defeated him? It's not Green Lantern's energy powers. It's not the power of the cosmic staff. It's not the shadowy power of Shade, because that just makes him stronger. So was Shade blasting him? Because if so, that just made him stronger. I don't know why everybody else was hovering around him, because they don't have no powers that do that. What defeated him was Joaquin's all like, I wish this guy was toast. Like, and he meant it as being destroyed toast. Being the little genie thunderbolt dude, he's all comedic. So, and he gets wishes wrong. So what does he do? Turn Eclipso into actual toast. Bread toast. Burnt toast. And I'm thinking to myself, Eclipso is still alive. He is literally still alive, but he's inside toast. He's not back inside his crystal that keeps him contained. And they're gonna bury him, or they're gonna get rid of him somewhere so nobody can find him. But he's still around. He could easily break through toast. And the energy blast didn't even destroy the toast. So therefore, he is still alive. He is too powerful. Whoever they fight next in season 3, they should be able to whoop on within seconds, because all they have to do is get the genie dude, turn him into toast. It was meant for like a comedic way. And it made it seem so stupid. Could you imagine getting rid of Voldemort by turning him into toast? And then now we get to the tone of this season. The tone is pretty consistent. That's one thing I always give up to Stargirl. Like, their show always has that nice way of blending humor and dark. But it was a bit too humorous this season at times. But sometimes it was in a cute kind of way with the dog. Like the dog, when Courtney was trying to sleep because Jenny's in her bed, the dog puts like his butt in her face and she doesn't really like that. The scene with the dog, like kind of like, I think, well, the dog was doing something with music in the opening. Like I'm too sexy for my body. Like that was cool. Yeah, even though the giant cheeseburger thing was weird, it was still funny. Um, but other than that, there were just sometimes in the show, especially when it came to Mike, when Mike first found that pen, it just felt like a Disney Channel type show. But then the tone shifts from all that, and not so much dark grittiness, because like in the first season, it had some darkness to it. But in this season, it just felt light on the darkness, but more on the sad, woe is me. It was more dramatic this season, I would say. Um, but the drama wasn't always well placed. It was good for Yolanda big time. It was mishandled with Beth and Rick. With Courtney, it just made her seem like a brat. Like she like she was just all like, "How dare you lie to me?" and blah 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 stuff like that. But she lies to other people too in the season, so it's kind of like I don't get that. So it's kind of like they tried to shift tones a little bit and try some new things, but it just didn't work out for them. I appreciate them going like the light, sad route for drama and stuff, but you can't just have drama all with one character. That's really what they tried to do. You have to blend it better so that everything flows better. And this is why this season needed to be longer. They tried to flesh too much out in 13 episodes with way too many people, and it just didn't like match up too well, you know? And so it's okay they want to go to sad woe is me route. Like, Doom Patrol does that every season, every episode, and they still have humor and they have a great way of blending the two. But with this show, it's like, okay, we're gonna have a couple of episodes of humor. Now we're gonna have the rest of the episodes be like woe is me, and we'll have one or two dark episodes and that's it. That's like a Titans kind of thing. You can't do that. Like you just can't do that. You gotta have it flow better. Like yeah, like it's like one thing they teach people about painting. Say you paint something that's two main colors. Like, okay, here are the main colors. You're painting like a forest, right? Of course, you're gonna have your greens, your browns, and your blues and stuff. But then let's say you add like a mystery color in there, like yellow, and you put it at the top. Well, you just put it at the top, you also gotta have it at the bottom too, or somewhere in the middle. You just can't have it in that one spot. And that's kind of like what they was doing when they did the tone of this season. And then don't even get me started on the action. Having one action-packed episode, or 1.5 packed action episode, and then sparse like action in a couple of episodes just was not good enough. No, 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 no. Like this season lacked action big time. And it's a superhero show. You were supposed to have action. And there was little to none. The first season had way more action. Even if the action didn't even last that long. But it was still engaging. This season's action was not engaging. And I just kept watching so many episodes thinking it would be so much better if you just threw in a little action here and there. And they did not do that. So all in all, I still think this is a good show. It's an amazing show. I still think this season was okay to good, but it was nothing compared to the first season. And you cannot deny that. You cannot simply say this season was amazing, this season was phenomenal, nothing was wrong with this season, because there were things wrong with this season, especially when you look at it through like a microscope and everything. And you can't say this is a terrible season because it was not a terrible season. It just had so many flaws. It felt like a new team of people tried to like recreate what the first season was, but then still do their other thing. That's what it felt like. Now I have no idea because I don't pay attention to the directors or the writers and stuff like that or the production staff, so I have no idea who got changed in and out. I will look later on online as I'm like editing just to see if like the same people was like rocking and rolling on this show, because if not, that explains why the tone was different. So this is why this season just broke my heart. Like it truly did. And that's why this video had to be so long, because I had to get this crap out. Because I love this show. And I was very disappointed by the STD that it caught, known as the CW. And it's just like the CW, like I've said in my other video, like the CW ruined this show because it's trying to make this into another CW type show. And I knew that was going to happen once this show was fully on the CW. Like, and they're going to keep going that route. This will be another Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, and Legends of Tomorrow type show by like the probably third or fourth season, because they're going to do what the CW always does, and that's messes everything up, because it's just what they do. It is just what they do. Okay, I was right. I just got through looking at the list of writers and directors. The list is, for the most part, direction-wise, completely different from season 1 and season 2. A lot of the people that direct the episodes in season 1 didn't show, well, actually, it's kind of the same somewhat. A couple of them that showed up in season 1 did again show up in season 2. Some of the more better episodes. Some of the newer people from the episodes I did not like. Now, as for writing, so for direction, it was relative the same, but a little different here and there. Now, with the writing, that was completely different. The majority of episodes in season 1 that was written by Jeff Johns. I don't like Jeff Johns. I'm not defending him, but that's probably like, since he's so well versed in comic books and with DC and with the character he created, that's why season 1 turned out better. In season 2, he only wrote 2 episodes, the first one and the last one. Surprise, surprise, I liked the first one and I liked the last one. And then writing wise, a whole bunch of new people came in for the second season. And this is probably now why the tone has shifted so much in the second season and why it feels like a completely different show. And because like when you do bring in new people, like it can always be a good thing. Because like sometimes when you need like a romantic episode, you're gonna bring in somebody who writes romance. If you need a comedic one, you bring in a comedian type person, drama, action, whatever, horror. So you have to bring in who's well suited for stuff. However, when you work on a show for like say an entire season and you get the tone down, it's best to always bring in those same type of people because they can always write for those same type of tones. And then when you start bringing in new people, you have them try to match the tone of the other one. If they can't, then you co-write stuff. A lot of times Jeff co-wrote episodes in season 1 with other people, but he was more hands-on in season 1. The reason why he wasn't so hands-on in season 2 probably has to do with the whole Justice League Ray Fisher thing and Joss Whedon thing, because Jeff was named as one of those toxic people, but he did not lose his job. Unlike Josh, who's just like a director, Jeff, I don't think he's ever going to be touched in DC. He knows the right people at DC, and he knows the right people at Warner Brothers. He could literally do like the worst thing in the world, and he probably will not be touched because it would probably be hidden and everything and be a cover up. Unless somebody actually has the proof that he actually did it, then there's no way of getting around that. Not saying he's like a terrible, touchy feeling person, not saying that. But from what I've heard, he is hard to get along with and everything. So since Ray Fisher said he is very toxic and nothing happened to him, he's gonna be there for a long time, and which is sad because they will punish other people, but not the people they deserve to punish. Like they punished Ray Fisher, and he wasn't even the one doing anything bad. You know what I'm saying? But like I said before, like it's a pretty okay, good season. It's just not great in my opinion. It's just like they had 13 episodes. It's an uneven split. They try to combine 2 different storylines all in one season, and with the whole like formation of the ISA 2.0 and the whole Eclipso stuff. I think they should have just focused on one consistent story and then did the other one the next. It's kind of like Tron Legacy. Now, I love Tron Legacy. I think it's a really great movie. But also, I agree with people. It was 3 different stories crammed all in one 2-hour movie. You had the stuff with Sam, Flynn, whatever his name is, Flynn, trying to find his dad, and going through the grid. Then you had another story with the ISOs, the Resistance, and Clue. Then you had the third story, which was Clue trying to come to the real world and dominate it and stuff. If they just would have broke those down in a trilogy, I think they still would have had sequels and everything. And that's how like Stargirl was. They tried to cram too much all in one. And that's why a lot of fans feel like divided about this. Like, you know, this season disappointed me and it kind of broke my heart a little bit, you know? And that's just like my gripes with like this season. Sometimes less is better. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.